Oh well,
That's why you go to the hairdressers for 2 hours.
we all do our bit. And use all our chemicals, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And you're not that environmental friendly because you wear jewellery.
Jewellery. Oh, this is very environmentally friendly jewellery.
Oh, is it?
Come out of the green.
So where did you go to, Murray? Where were you away at?
We were singing the Bunbury Men of Song in Brisbane.
Ah, were you?
Yeah, Male Voice Festival, yeah.
Good afternoon, councillors, members of the public, officers. Welcome along. I declare this meeting open. We have Councillor Giles is on leave of absence. Councillor Cook is back. And I also have a request from Councillor Hayward seeking council approval to participate by a remote location. Councillor Hayward is currently in Exmouth. Can I have someone move that way, please? Councillor Cook, seconder. Councillor McGuinness, all in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So, Councillor Hayward, welcome to the meeting.
Thanks very much.
Declarations of interest. I have a declaration from Councillor McGuell, who declares a financial interest with respect to item 10.3.1. as the program manager for the Girls Academy is one of his clients. Are there any further declarations of interest? Thank you. There are no questions. Confirmation of the previous meeting. Someone prepared to move confirmation. Councillor Jones, Councillor Cook, all in favour. Councillor Hayward, you can just say aye. Aye. Yeah, that's carried unanimously. You can say no as well, but you know what I mean. Do we have any petitions tonight, councillors? We have a request for a deputation from Mr. Garton with respect to item 10.4.2. Those who approve that, please indicate. Those, thank you. Those who don't, that's unanimous. So, Mr. Garton, I presume that's you. I'll invite you up when we get to that item. Method of dealing with the agenda. Councillors coming out for discussion are items 10.3.1, 10.4.2, 10.5.1. Are there any other items that councillors wish to... Councillor Steck?
10.43, sir.
Any others? Can I have someone move the balance, please? Councillor Cook, Councillor Jones, all in favour? Aye. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll go to 10.3.1. Councillors, thanks, Councillor McGuell. Just to, first of all, I need a resolution that we reconvene that debate, and then I'll have some comments to make. So, someone, Councillor Steele, Councillor Cook, all in favour? Thank you, that's carried unanimously. Councillor McGuell is out of the room. Councillor Hayward, for your information. So this is where the debate got to before we resolved to defer this matter. So we need to pick up the debate from this point. So we had an amendment. We have an amendment. You can see it on the screen in front of you. Move Councillor Steele, seconded Councillor Steck. And you can read that for yourself. It's simply relating to the Clontarf Academy. And then we have 15,000 for the Girls Academy. So that's where we're at. So I'm prepared to resume debate on that particular amendment. Are we all clear with that? 15 each. Okay, so we've had Councillor Steele, Steck, Kelly and Jones speak for. Councillors Cook, Warnock and Hayward speak against. At this stage, I'll call for a further speaker against. There is none. Councillor Steele, do you wish to close this?
I would only like to say that I would actually prefer the new executive recommendation of $30,000 each.
We're dealing with this in front of us at the moment. So long as you're aware. Okay, I'll put it. So that is the amendment. All in favour of that amendment, please raise your hands. Those against? Against. That's 4 against. That's carried. So that amendment becomes the substantive matter. So I'll wait for Jamie to come back with that. Just bear with us, Councillor Hayward. We're doing a little bit of admin work here. there were a few other parts to this initial recommendation. Do you have the other parts there, Jamie?
So this reverts now to the substantive.
Yes, yeah, which is
only,
that one there.
which is only that with now the amendment, which is passed.
Was that part of it?
No, not at this stage.
Wasn't.
Not the original.
Okay, all right.
We need to deal with this.
Okay, so we have that the substantive motion is that. And we must have had a move and a second for that as well.
Yes, Councillor Hayward. And
Councillor Hayward moved that.
Second, Nebra.
Okay, so can you put that in there? Okay. I'm now in your hands, councillors. You can move further amendments to that if you wish. Otherwise, I'm going to seek someone to speak against that. Councillor Kelly.
Some direction from you about the bits about recognising the contribution, etc., please. Is this does this take place of part 3, part 4, and are the other parts still relevant?
That was my understanding that they were parts. I'm guided by the acting CEO that those are not. So please, I'll hand over to him.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because council was in debate, you need to resolve the motion that was already on the books. So you've had the amendment, you've now dealt with the amendment. The amendment amended it and became the substantive motion. The substantive motion is now in front of you. So council has the opportunity of debating this particular aspect, approving it or not approving it, and then perhaps another elected member may wish to move and second the other points that officers had recommended, essentially now being 1, 2 and 5 of the alternate recommendation.
Can you put those up on the screen, please, Jamie?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because they are not negating the motion, they could easily be added in as an amendment.
Yep, okay. Councillor Kelly?
If this is helpful, Mr. Mayor, perhaps if we just take out 3, 4, put the amendment in as number 3, 5 becomes 4, and that would become the substantive motion, if that helps as an amendment to it, Mr. Mayor. And if that's the case, then I would move that amendment.
Yep, I'm happy to accept that as an amendment. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Steck. I'll just wait for Jamie to do that, and then I'll let Councillor Hayward know what's going on. No rush, Jamie, just take your time. Okay, thanks for that. So, Councillor Hayward, at the moment, the amendment is 1, Council recognises the contribution that Clontarf Foundation Newton Moore Girls Academy, role models and leaders, provide to the community and the role they play in developing young people. 2, authorises the CEO to negotiate an individual memorandum of understanding with each organisation for the 2017-18 financial year. 3, Council support the inclusion of $15,000 in the draft 2017-18 annual budget for PR 4350, support Southwest Clontarf Academy, Newton Moore College, and $15,000 for the Girls Academy, subject to funding agreements being signed between the parties and the City. And 4, note that any future contributions to either organisation will be considered on an annual basis through Council's budget deliberations. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think this amendment merely captures the spirit that the original resolution was made, in which it was made, and tidies it up to make sure that council is keeping in step with the arrangements as they progress. So I just ask councillors to support that amendment as reflecting the original intent.
Thank you. Councillor Steck? Don't wish to... Is the Speaker against? I'll put the amendment. All in favour? Aye. That's carried unanimously. The amendment therefore becomes the substantive motion. Are there any speakers against? I'll put the substantive motion. All in favour, please indicate. Aye. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks very much, councillors, and thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Councillor Steele. We move to item 10.4.2. Mr Garton, would you like to come through? Welcome along. You have 5 minutes, and there's a clock in front of me here somewhere that'll guide you. Okay.
I'm here to speak against the recommendation made by the council with respect to rezoning the zoning change means moving the setback, and is my view that, and that of our neighbours, that the rear yard should be orientated to the north side of the boundary as it now stands, which ensures the privacy of the existing residents. The setback of 7 metres should be retained as part of the original planning regulations. When the land was purchased, these rules would have been clearly in place. The land was originally, a few years ago, was actually open space and has since been rezoned into 2 residential blocks. The changes put forward by the proponent to me is purely to increase the views from that block, and the council has made it quite clear in the past with rezoning applications in regard to a 4-storey complex of along Ocean Drive that the retention of views or the enhancement of views is not a consideration for rezoning. So what we would like is simply the current rules to remain in place, and the rezoning and the zoning for the land to remain as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr CEO, before I put this, can I just clarify from our town planning officers that the recommendation is compliant with the city's town planning scheme and regulations?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. From the assessment done by our town planning team, they have assessed it against the scheme, the local planning scheme, and also against the residential design codes.
And it's compliant?
As compliant.
Thank you. Someone prepared to move this? Councillor Steck, is there a seconder? Councillor Cook? Anyone? We're going to have a debate on this? I'll put it all in favour. Aye. Those against? 3 against, that's carried. Thank you. We move to item 10.4.3. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation? Councillor Kelly, is there a seconder? Councillor Cook? Councillor Kelly?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think you'll find that this is all about getting the ultimate use out of Payne Park and the multi-use out of facilities that belong to the city and are used by different clubs. iSports, I can't speak highly enough of the iSports organisation, Mr Mayor. They're not only accessible for people with disabilities, but they're accessible for all people. Indeed, Councillor Cook could go along and play bocce there. and probably do it quite well as to boot. So I think this is an excellent move to have a lease over the portion of Lot 100 so that iSports can get on with what they do best. And I commend it as a multiple use of an area that could do with a lot more use. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cook. Speaker against, Councillor
Sorry,
Stick.
sir, can I just ask a question? I just a little bit troubled with this because I haven't seen an overall sports plan of all sports facilities and the future of those within the district of Bunbury. So my question would be, when would we see an entire sports plan? And does this fit within that?
Yeah, I'll be guided by the Director of Corporate and Community. I recall council being presented with a master plan for, I don't know if it covered all sporting areas, Ms Addison-Brown, but can you elaborate, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I can. The staff have done a desktop analysis of all the existing plans, including the Hay Park Master Plan and any previous recreation plans over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. A draft will be presented to Council, I believe, towards the end of August. I just have to confirm with the CEO which date, and just some assumptions and seeking direction on the way they would like to proceed in terms of prioritisation of budgets for sporting facilities.
Thank you.
The work has been done.
Do you wish to speak against this, Councillor Stick? No. Is there a speaker against this? I'll put it all in favour.
Aye.
Those against? One against. That's carried. Thank you. We move to item 10.5.1. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation?
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of questions first, if I may.
Yep, sure.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ask through you, point 3, the executive recommendation says include new gallery and storage space to provide additional flexible exhibition storage space, etc. I just want to make it clarified for all in Sunday, really, that this either does include a new gallery and storage space, or is this meant to say this includes new gallery and storage space? Is there a comma in there? Does this imply that we're looking at a new gallery as in a new building? That's the first question.
Yeah, sure. I'll ask the acting CEO to respond to that.
Through Mr Mayor, the components that have been included in the officer's recommendation are to provide guidance back to the architect. As part of that process, they would then develop up concepts and ideas, and needing to obviously have significant community engagement with our arts community and other people. Out of that will come a business case, and if the business case is acceptable to council, then those key components will be further developed.
Thank you.
The second part of my question was pretty well answered there, Mr Mayor. I'm taking it as soon as this executive recommendation is passed, if it is indeed passed, that the consultants will be straight out to the arts community tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
I don't believe they'll be able to do that, Councillor Kelly, but I get the gist of what you're saying. Mr CEO, have you or one of your officers been given that advice from the consultants when they will start the active consultation process of this project?
Mr Mayor, I'll defer to the Director in case he's got any further advice, but if I can, we would assume that once these components are locked in by Council, agreed to, that they will then form up their engagement strategy. I'm not sure if the Director's got anything further to add.
No, that's fine. Councillor Hayward, for your information, Mr Harris just waved no. He doesn't have anything further to add. So, can I invite someone to move this recommendation? Yes, go ahead, Councillor McCleary.
And we're investigating the storage space. Will that be a storage space with air conditioning, correct storage for our art goods? Because that is very important that that is taken on board.
I think that's a given, Councillor McCleary. Mover, Councillor Kelly. Second up, Councillor McGuinness. Councillor Kelly.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, it's I think most people in Bunbury in the arts that welcome a new gallery and welcome the development of a civic and cultural precinct that was able to highlight all the great things that we do in Bunbury in the arts and culture. So this is a preliminary step to ensure that we've given an imprimatur to the consultants to get out there and speak with people firstly, including ourselves, I guess, and to take us to the next step. I'm sure that there will be lots and lots of comment to come through as to what we are able to do in this space, and looking forward to it as we progress, Mr Mayor. Hopefully, if we all sell a few Lamingtons or buy a few lotto tickets, we might get a windfall that can create a gallery there that would be a highlight for the Southwest and indeed for the state, preferably nationally recognised and perhaps internationally as well. So I encourage councillors to support the executive recommendation as the next step in this process. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McGuinness.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, just to echo what Councillor Kelly's saying, and I'm certainly heartened to hear that we will include community consultation in there to the arts community. I think there's a really great opportunity for us to look at what the need is, and that the building meets the need of the community rather than we build a building first and then try to retrofit it. So really heartened to hear that, and I encourage everybody to support this motion as it is.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got several questions as well, actually, and they go to all the options. The capital cost to every single one of them is just explosive. So it seems like council doesn't really know what it wants, because you can't have a project worth 12 million in one hand and then say, actually, it's going to cost 24 million.
What's your question, Councillor Steck?
Well, my question is, why is the variance so large? And again, my next question would be, is this the best place for a new art gallery? And then my next question would be, where is the study that says we need to build 4 to 8 levels? Again, that's very significantly different. 4 levels of car bays is different than 8 levels of car bays. That's going to vary the price again. So, given this information, I can't vote for this.
Okay, you've asked some questions there. I'll just ask the Acting CEO to respond.
Through Mr Mayor, again, we're at the very early stages of a project. Part of the project brief for Bollig Design Group was to also prepare business cases for the various components of this project. So as the project is refined, Mr Mayor, Bollig Design Group will also provide options for council to consider in terms of the business case options for all those aspects that Councillor Steck has raised.
Okay, so Councillor Steck, do you wish to speak against this?
I've said it, what I've had to say.
Okay. Speaker 4. Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I was reading today that the Van Gogh exhibition at the National Gallery of Victoria has attracted 420,000 people. I read constantly about the success of Mona in Tasmania, that 400,000 people a year visit that, and Tasmania's population is 500,000. These are very early steps yet, but how exciting is the prospect of a new gallery? It really is fantastic. I think that there's going to be a lot of community consultation, community input, a very exciting prospect that this whole area here will make its mark as a civic square and have a lot of people involvement. So given that we're confirming these elements, I think it really is a forward step for the city, and it's a great forward move.
Speaker against? Councillor Kelly. I'll put it all in favour, please indicate.
Aye.
Those against? That's one, that's carried. One against. Thank you very much. We move to 12.1. There's a motion on notice. Councillor Steck, do you wish to move this?
Sorry, sir. Yes, I would, and I would go with the officer's recommendation, option 1, please.
Seconder. Councillor Steele. Councillor Steck?
Yes, sorry. Option 3, sorry, sir.
Yeah, I know what you meant. Yeah. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Steele? Councillor Steele? I'll put it all in favour, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's carried. 7-5. Can I have somebody move, is that, we're up to 15.11, 14.1. Thank you. I'll go off your screen, Jamie. You have a question, Councillor McGuinness?
Oh, sorry, Mr Mayor, it was about the last item. Can I withdraw my vote? I haven't had time to read that. I didn't have it in my papers.
Yeah, I've already ruled on it, yeah. So we move into item 14.1. Before I... Jamie's already got you in there, Councillor Cook, but before I invite a mover, are there any questions about this matter? Councillor Hayward, are you okay with this one? You have a question? It's regarding the amendment to delegation contract price variation. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
Just trying to catch up to this one, and I thank the acting CEO for the information given to us. The fail safe for contract variations up to $150,000, how they would come back.
Yeah,
It's a question.
it's a question. Yeah, it's a question. No, well, we can do that, Councillor Cook. In fact, we should do that, shouldn't we? Yeah, you're moving it. Is there a seconder to the fact that we actually consider this matter? Thank you, Councillor McGuell. All in favour?
Aye.
Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Sorry about that. Your question, Councillor Kelly.
So Councillor Cook's refreshed after his holidays.
Yeah,
Very sharp.
I need to go on a holiday, I suspect. Yeah.
Mr Mayor, I just wanted the CEO to outline, for the benefit of myself and councillors, I guess, the fail-safe about getting up to $150,000 variation, what that might do to a budget or to the aftermath, if you like, that there's a $150,000 variation made and then it comes back to us. At what stage do we get informed so that we can look at a budget, look at what it does to the rest of our works, Mr Mayor? Just a bit of a broad explanation on that.
Thanks, Councillor Kelly. Acting CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. So what we've indicated as the officer's recommendation, originally this was prefaced on 10% of the value of our purchasing authority at level, and at director level that is up to $100,000, and at the CEO level up to $250,000. We would certainly consider that anything of that magnitude probably should be brought back to council for its consideration, and we have therefore recommended a maximum figure of $150,000. Should council not support that figure, I would just urge you to consider a figure that is reasonable enough for us to be allowed to deal with variations as they come through. We have two variations at the moment for around the $30,000 mark. When we're talking about a $12 million project, those are quite minor in the scale of the project, and we would not be able to manage that project efficiently if we needed to come back to council each time for approval for that variation. So the actual figure, Mr Mayor, I guess is up for council to consider whether that's appropriate or not.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, another question?
Yeah, quick one. I just want to get a bit of a handle on when bells start ringing about budget. Let's say 30,000, comfortable with that. 50,000, then it gets to 70, then it gets to 120. At what stage do we, as the governance group, get brought into this process?
Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Officers would deal with this matter insofar as there's a budget for each project. Most budgets would have a contingency amount of between 10 and 20% of the project total, being for contingencies. We would obviously operate within the budget, and if there were any concerns that the budget was likely to be stretched by too many variations at the early stage of the budget, we would be reporting to council at the earliest opportunity.
I think also, Mr Acting CEO, through our financial controls, which we have in place, there would also be other checks and balances between departments, so I ultimately come back through Finance Department to actually highlight the fact that there is a great variation here and it should be brought to our attention. Is that another safeguard?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Okay.
Can I just ask the question? Sorry,
another
sir.
question?
I I know the staff's explained the reason why this variation is required, but I'm having trouble accepting the $150,000 as being an allowance factor for any project variation. And that concerns me. It concerns me
What's
that...
your question, Councillor Steck?
My question would be, why does it need to be so high for a variation?
Yeah, the acting CEO just explained that. If you wish to not accept that, you can move an amendment to it after we've discussed it. Councillor Jones, do you have a further question, or are you moving it?
Yes, a further question, Mr Mayor. Are those percentages the sorts of percentages that are acceptable in the commercial or the private sector?
10% variation. What's your opinion, Mr CEO?
Mr Mayor, depending on the size of projects, the percentage figures may be similar to that. However, you could be talking about projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars in the perhaps in the large-scale industrial or mining sector or state government sector versus a local government projects that might be in the realm of $5 to $20 million ordinarily.
Okay, we all sweep. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation? Councillor Kelly. Second up. Is there a second up? Councillor Jones, Councillor Kelly.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, I understand that any project that the council undertakes has some sort of contingency in there for variations, and that's just a natural thing to do with a contract. Obviously, we always hope that our projects would come in on time and under budget. It doesn't always happen that way. I'm comfortable that a project that would only require a $20,000 or $30,000 variation can occur, because there would be a contingency built into that, the variation contingency built into the smaller projects, as there would be a larger project. I think this is sensible in that there are fail-safes built in. This doesn't mean that a project with only $30,000 worth of variation built in is going to have a $150,000 blowout without coming back to the city council. So I think it's a sensible and practical way forward. And the fail-safes that are built into there will protect all of us, including the ratepayers, from having unforeseen budget stress. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jones. Is there a speaker against? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I can see that in our background it was very kindly put to us that delegations free up council time to enable elected members to focus on representation, strategic planning and community leadership. However, they forgot to add also council revenue is not private enterprise money. It is held in trust on behalf of the ratepayer for council to administer, and that's us. And I'm not willing to relinquish the responsibility, and I believe that it all takes a few days for it to come to council for us to discuss if there is a variation. And variations quite often are a way now that contractors and developers get a little bit extra money in. They put in a really good quote, and then they come up with these variations. So we need to keep a really good, strong eye on that. And my responsibility as a councillor is just that, in conjunction with our executives. And I believe that if we were to take it at 100,000, that would be much more responsible. Thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor Cook.
Mr Mayor, can I move an amendment, please?
You can.
I'd like to move that the 10% remain, but the value is altered to $50,000, and I seek its seconder.
Councillor Cook. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Cook?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I think it's just a step too far for me, 10,000 to 150,000. I think it's much more prudent. I think one of the implied things that Councillor McCleary said was trying to put pressure on contractors to ensure that they do come in within their quoted price. And if we take the pressure valve off too much, I think it gives a little too much leeway. So I'd urge you to support $50,000. Thank you.
Councillor McCleary. A question to the acting CEO. What is your current delegation, or your office's current delegation amount?
Through Mr Mayor, the CEO's financial delegation is $250,000 and the directors are $100,000.
And does that include accepting variations to contracts?
the variations to contract in accordance with that delegation was changed to 10% of the responsible officer's amount of authority, which in the case of the director would be a maximum of $10,000, in the case of the CEO would be a maximum of $25,000.
$25,000, okay. Thank you. Speaker against this amendment? I'll put the amendment. All in favour, please indicate. Those against? Against. That's carried. The amendment's carried. And that becomes 10% or 50,000. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Kelly? I'll put it. All in favour. Aye. Those against? 1. That's carried. Thank you. Can I have someone move we go behind closed doors, please? Councillor Kelly, second to Councillor Cook. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Hayward, we bid you farewell.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time. She's okay.